I spent the entirety of last week adding a basic framework of a combat system to my game. Obviously, it's still pretty boring though, so I'd like to improve it with fancy combat effects, particle systems, and other sorts of hype. But then I stopped to think, why does my player character look like that? Is it because I suck at art? Or is it because I created that player character in the space of 5 minutes as a placeholder? I'd like to have the player do things like animate a sword swing, fire projectiles, and do cool idle animations. But I really can't do that if the player character is just a single blob of vertices. So I thought I might as well take the opportunity to redo my player character and also build a proper framework to animate characters for this game while I'm at it. How hard can it be? Well, I don't know, as I haven't started it yet. Try and animate a character using scene nodes. I'd quite like to have a design where the different bits of the character can move around freely. So a look like this one I quite like. The fact that the different bits of the character can move independently of the rest of the model is good. So yeah, I think a look that's a bit like what Overworld had would be quite interesting. Because it's nice, because you can see that the way that the player moves is quite interesting, and it just gives a lot of freedom in terms of character customizability, which I think is a good thing. Now I think it should be completely possible to animate that with just scene nodes, so no need to use vertex skinning or anything like that. I think it will have to be quite a simple look because it's mostly just a technical system I'd be building, but I would like to have an idea of how it will look, and ideally it will also be able to make it look good. Try and improve the player character. Now I want the animations to look decent, so I think I'm going to have to use a tool like Blender. Probably to end the week off I would say try and get... I would like to have the player character model with its new extremities fully animated in the world and able to form a few basic animations, you know, like an idle animation and a walk animation. I think when I'm also designing this system I would like to take into account that a lot of the NPCs in the world are probably going to use this exact same system. So it needs to be a fairly generic system for generating character models. So I think for the week that seems like a decent amount of work. The thing was, a little while ago I built a system in Blender where you could animate scenes using a sort of keyframe system. View an engine, I think that works, yeah. So that's just a cube. I should just be able to add an animation like this. Now in theory, if I was to run it, look at the animation there. Oh look, it worked! Ah! I think it works well enough for what I'm probably going to need for this. Because I think it's just going to be a lot of position rotation and that sort of thing. So I think my plan would be come up with some basic models for the objects, tie them all up together in Blender, animate them accordingly, and hopefully it will look good. Let's write some code. Right, so progress. Who's that down there? Fred! What are you doing? So I got the character generator, which is just a class which is able to generate character models for you. The idea is you'll do create character model and you'll give it some construction data. So that will essentially be information about what sort of model it is, as well as the sort of equipped items they have. I then have character models, so the character generator just creates a character model. The point of the character models is that they'll be the ones that it's just a class and it manages the scene nodes, and you'll be able to go to it and say things like begin this animation and it will just do the animation. So that abstracts that whole thing. I've also got this system where I've got different model types. So the idea for this is that you'll have different types of models. So for instance, humanoid models, but then something like the goblin might need something different entirely. So I've defined a few different model types, but really it's only the humanoid one. So say it's something like you had like a sandworm model or something like that, that obviously wouldn't need the humanoid one. So this really just defines which models are which. So for instance, this is the body one, and this is the different arms. And right now I've just got this basic scene animation, which, we have a look at that. This is as part of my animation code. So essentially the way it works is you define what you're animating at the top. I have different types, so you can animate materials and stuff with this system I've made. This is built into the engine, by the way. And then you define the animations down here. So for instance, this walk animation. But really you just define the positions, and this works based on keyframes. So this is what it looks like at the moment. It's a basic example. So this is meant to be the player body, and then these are the legs. So back and forth, and that's just what this animation is. Now the idea is that what I'd be able to do from here is animate something in Blender, create an animation file, and then just be able to stick that in the project somewhere. Okay, well here's my newly reformed player character model. I'm trying to take some inspiration from a few different places, so I found a few different things that I quite liked. Mostly it was from Overworld. So you often get different bits, like the arms can just be detached like this. So essentially what I've done with this model is I've got different layers for all the different things. So you see I've got player body, head, And then I'm just going to try and get that in Blender somehow. Part of the problem I have is related to where the origin of the items is actually going to be. So you can see the origins down here. If you don't know anything about that, all that means is that actually rotating the objects is going to be annoying because they rotate around this bit. So yeah, something like origin to geometry, because then when you rotate it, it actually rotates relative to what seems like the center of the object. I'm going to make sure that one of these things is actually moved into place. Anyway, so tomorrow I'm only going to have about half the day to develop because I've got to do some other things, so see ya. Morning. So I spent most of today addressing quite a few historic issues that have been in my animation system for a little while now. Previously it just used to crash when running certain animations which fell into certain situations. I made this animation in Blender. Wow, look at that! I'm clearly a very skilled artistic person. I essentially started trying to do this arm properly and then decided for the leg that I was just needed to test the software. So the real important bit is this view animation in engine. So if I click this, then it will export everything. Look at that! Ignore the fact that there are no colors. Wow. Yeah, it's pretty much perfect. The benefit of this system is, say I was to edit one of the positions, like if I put it over here and rotated it like this, then I'd just be able to do export again, and I don't have to do anything, and I should just see it immediately. Yeah, like there it is. So yeah, changes, that's nice. Look at all these fixes. I should be able to go off now and actually start trying to animate the thing properly. Let's cut to that now. Hello. It's kind of late in the evening, so I'm going to have to be a bit quiet, but I've been working a bit on the animation. So here's what I've got so far. Yeah. So I made a few different versions of this. The first one I think was a bit too overcomplicated, but you can see I kind of got the arms doing stuff. You're going to have to ignore the other half of this. So the reason this is happening is because the way I got this to work is that I flipped the scale of the x-axis, which will mirror it, but for the engine it means that the normals are wrong and the backface culling doesn't work properly, so you get these really weird looking meshes. So yeah, I feel like that's the sort of style I would probably prefer. So I've copied this quite a bit off of Overworld. If we just have a look at that, you see how the legs sort of move in that way? If you ask me, that looks a lot like a sine wave. So yeah, I might have to look into that, because that almost says to me that they're done programmatically. The way it currently works is that Blender just exports one of these animation files, and regardless, I've got plans in future, so you know, the hair isn't going to be included in the model for the face, because why would it be? You can have different hairstyles for different characters. And then I'm going to use my voxelizer to generate the relevant body pieces on the fly, but with the character customizer. I'm kind of doing everything at once at the moment. I mean, the Blender system, that's what I'm doing right now, so this is going to be a bit of a weird week, I think. Anyway, I got up at about 8 this morning and it's currently 11 o'clock, so I'm a bit knackered. I think I'm just going to go to bed. Okay, well, I didn't record anything yesterday because life got in the way, but I did do some work. So I've updated the animation system, so I'm playing about with combining two animations at once. First of all, ignore that arm. I've now got these options at the top where you can turn different animations on and off. So you can see there's an upper animation playing as well. So you can sort of isolate the animations in different ways. What I have largely ended up doing is just doing it by hand. Now that does make things easier, because doing it by hand means that I don't have to build some sort of automation export pipeline from Blender to files. Now I don't think that's going to be a problem, because a lot of the conclusions I came to was that actually the simpler animations look better. So there's actually really not much going on in this animation. So yeah, doing some of this stuff by hand I don't feel too bad about. I think my plan for the moment is build a really nice tool that will allow me to properly view and inspect. You know, like I can have hot reloading of animations and that sort of things. The Trello board has kind of become a bit irrelevant for this week because a lot of this stuff is just blending together. Haha, blending. Yes! Oh, look at that! Oh, it looks kind of ridiculous. Oh, in theory... Yes! Oh, look at this, lads. Look at this! That's definitely what it should look like. Oh, that looks so amazing. Maybe... okay, so clearly there's some positioning that needs to take place. Yay! Although it does clip through his head a little bit, which it definitely shouldn't. Yeah, I think I'm going to have more of a look at how the hands actually work. It looks more like an extremity than maybe hands should. The characters in Cube World have these sort of like gelatinous orbs for arms. And I can see why that would be a good idea, because let's see if I can get a better shot. You see how they kind of float away from the body, but they also still look realistic. I might try with a spherical hand, just to see what it looks like, but I also don't want to copy Cube World too much. Well, whatever. I'll try it and see what it looks like, because I've essentially used their approach to feet anyway, and it looks better as a result. So what I did yesterday was I managed to get the player into the overworld. Here he is. That's kind of interesting. Let's turn off hitboxes. So a few things have changed. So firstly, things follow you, and they look at the direction they're going in. So this is mostly to get the player to work, but I added it for the enemies as well. So yeah, I mean, you can see the animation playing out in the overworld. That looks pretty cool. It's interesting as a tech demo. I mean, he looks really ditzy at the moment, doesn't he? It's like, this is not the final animation, people. Don't worry about that. But it's a tricky thing. I'm definitely gonna have to learn how to get good at animations. I quite like the feet, but I definitely don't like the hands. But I think, yeah, I can fix that. There's lots still to change, but I'm pleased with how it looks, actually. I do think it's a good step forwards. I mean, it looks way more interesting. There's just more stuff going on. I can see in my mind the potential, and that's what it's all about. I know where I want it to be. I just got to get there. No, I think it's good. I'm pleased with that progress. I mean, that was what I was hoping to get for the end of the week. So at the moment, it's more of a technical system, but in future, it will hopefully be more involved. I'll definitely be improving the animation for the hands next week when I actually start to do combat effects and all that sort of thing. So it also works with controllers now. I mean, it's always worked with controllers, but I had to fix some stuff in order to get that to work. You can see when you've got a controller, you can make them go really slow. But yeah, everything else works. It's because I actually spent the time to write a decent input system, so controller just works out the box. Hello! I was originally thinking I was going to have more time over the weekend to develop the game, but I ended up spending most of the time editing this video, so I thought instead I would just end the video by showing you the game running on the iPad. Alright, here we go. Hey! See, that's the time it takes to generate the world. Here we go. Can you see the there it is. I don't think I mentioned in the last video, but I did actually end up switching over to the blob hands, so they look better, so pleased about that. Let's do an attack. Boop. Oh, it crashed. You done yet? Oh, there you go. Okay, well, you know, start to improve, but it does work. What a surprise. Even I'm surprised. The only thing I have left to say is subscribe.